the outcome of the regional elections in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, or Schreckpommern as Bild put it this morning, were all over the news in European media and even in China, actually, as colleagues covering the G20 meeting told me. The top story was Merkel's woes in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, and the second best, the other top story was the good news that the Great Panda is saved from extinction eventually. That probably reflects an interest in both German politics in general and also in Angela Merkel's fate and future, if I may say. Still, and I would argue that one can even say that people in other EU countries are probably better informed on Greek, on French, on British particularly, or in their case on German interior politics today than ever before. But is that already a common European public sphere? Is that a common European public space? This is one of the questions that we would like to discuss today. The second observation that pours a little bit of water into that wine of that everybody is interested in what's happening in other countries is that after every European Council meeting, summit as we usually say, and I've covered a lot of them, not as many as Rolf-Dieter Krause, of course, but sufficiently enough for my likings. You have a European institution that's sat together for a few hours a day or even more than a day, making decisions, and then you have, as a journalist, to choose whether press conference to attend, because you can always do only one, and there's always maybe not 28, but close to. What I'm trying to say is that the outcome of a meeting of a European institution and a high-level European institution, a meeting of heads of states and government, is then broken down into 28 different outcomes where everybody seems to be the winner and no one wants to be the loser. So what does that mean for handling European public policy and for communicating about European public policy that both of you, in one way or the other, have to do? Let me start with Markus Ferber. We were a lot in touch over the last years. I've been here for almost 5 years now, and probably 4 years of them were crisis times. While we always were, not only the two of us, but while there was a lively European debate and discussion about the financial crisis and the European reaction to it, it seems that there's not much common ground already when it comes to analyzing the reasons for the financial woes of Greece, for example. Was it this almost bankruptcy? Was it a liquidity problem? Or was it one of insolvency? And the same goes, and even more so, for the answer to that. Should we bail them out or not? Does one have to front-load reforms or wait for better times? So, Markus Ferber, Europe tightened the fiscal rules as a response to the crisis, with much bravado, I might say, and then it shied away this summer only from enforcing them and putting them into practice for the first time when Portugal and Spain were should have been fined for, or were supposed to be fined for, let's say, exceeding their fiscal budget. Is that is the EU creating its own credibility problem there, or is that just the only way to create consensus among Southern and Northern Europe and to create such thing as a public space and public opinion that makes everybody happy?
And how many minutes do we have? And I thought we speak about communication, but thanks for the question. I think if Spain and Portugal would have been occurred a few years earlier, I think there would have been another decision process than now. And when we come back to 2008, there was really a consensus through all the member states as we needed unanimous decisions to strengthen the Stability and Growth Pact. We call it six-pack and two-pack, but it's still quite the same what we did in the 90s. But things have changed. In a lot of member states, there's still already now no remembrance why things happened, what happened in 2008, what was the reasoning for that. I was last week sitting on a panel where a former commissioner blamed Germany that we had, how did he call it, wages in Germany which are dumping wages, yeah, that was the wording, dumping wages in Germany, and that was the reasoning for the crisis, where I thought by myself, sorry, where the hell did I live in these years? And in Germany, politics is not deciding on the wages, it's the trade unions together with the entrepreneurs. And that Greece had 4 times higher increase of the wages from 2000 to 2008 was not a German decision, it was a Greek decision, and they had to pay for that. But after 8 years now, all these things are gone, I have the impression. And in our days, the communication goes in a quite different way. For the moment, everyone says, in Europe, if I would have the interest rates Mr. Schäuble has to pay, I would be the most luckiest one. I wouldn't have problems with the French budget, with the Italian budget, with the Greece, Portuguese, Spanish, whatever budget. But these horrible Germans do not accept that we get access to their low interest rates by whatever, Eurobonds, direct transfer, whatever. And I think that is one of the main problems. For the moment, the solution looks quite different than 8 years before, and we lost the momentum what we had in 2008.
But you say there was at a time such thing as a common understanding, a common response, and a common communication of those recipes that, to counter the crisis?
Yes, there was, but was.
Yeah.
And if you come to Spain and Portugal, it's very easy to understand. I said very clearly, in Spain we are waiting for the 3rd elections in 1 year because they are not able to build a government for various reasons, personality issues, party issues, class issues. So the leading class don't want to get rid of the power, a lot of things like that. And though there could be an incentive coming from Brussels by saying, wow, if you are not able to bring forward the budget for next year, you have really serious problems. That's why we put a first incentive to you. You have to pay 1 billion. And the same goes for Portugal, to be honest. The new government, which is in power now, said very clearly, all the things the old government has agreed with those who gave money to Portugal will not be kept anymore. And then to say, wow, we accept that, I think that is not the best communication, because that means for other countries, and everyone has another one in mind, which is still under the protection umbrella, the European Stability Mechanism. Of course, they will say, and Mr. Tsipras is inviting the whole club, will say, wow, if the rules does not apply to Spain and Portugal, why should they apply for Greece? Why don't we get better circumstances than which have been agreed even by myself last year ago?
You are, just that you speak of Greece, you're well connected in Greece. Have you ever had the impression that your position, that is an outspokenly German one, if I may say, was heard in Greece and was acknowledged and was truly understood?
If you speak with people who work as entrepreneurs, for example, in Greece, I think they have the same approach, because they say this state became bankrupt because, especially in the official sector, everyone took the state as its victim, and so no one took care on the state itself, but those who are engaged in the state organized good circumstances for themselves and, of course, for the whole family. Sorry to say it in these short words, but we have only restricted time. And they understood they have to overcome that old Greek system. But this momentum was lost as well. And we had 3 governments, if I count correctly. The Papandreou government, who made this famous announcement from a lovely boat, oh, sorry, I'm bankrupt, but we are still in the sunshine area. Then we had the Samaras government, and now the Tsipras government, or the second Tsipras government after they had already won election. Nothing has changed in that behavior, and that is a lot of mistrust in the people against their own state, against their own administration, because they see that Greece itself is not able to change it, and they are really happy to have voices like me who say, if you are not able to change yourself, we have to organize the pressure that you are doing the changes.
You're probably better off doing that, and Lutz Guellner has the more a job that no one will envy you for, as a representative of the European Commission, as a European official. Even if the Commission is a political one now, you're probably supposed to, I would argue, deliver factual argumentation and not political views. People indeed think very differently about different EU policies, and the one you deal with on your job is a very good one, is trade policy, which is technically one of the few pure EU-only competence policy areas. And still, there's 28 different views on should we have a transatlantic trade and investment partnership, or shouldn't we rather do that? When I say there's 28 of them, there's basically only two camps. One is largely in favor, one is a little bit in favor, and there are three countries where a public opinion is fiercely against TTIP. That is Germany, Austria, and Slovenia, according to a recent poll. Is that when did you first notice that things are going so wrong for you in Germany and Austria?
So before I answer your question, let me just come back to the previous panel, and I see that Anne is back. And I hope you noticed that something quite remarkable happened. Markus Ferber stood up and defended European Commission officials. That is, I think, quite amazing. Quite amazing. No, but joke aside, I think what is really important in all that, and that also links to your question, is the fact or the term of accountability. You know, who actually takes these decisions? Who is responsible for that? Who's responsible also to communicate about these things? And who gets, in the end, and that's the process of politics, who gets the blame or the praise? And I think TTIP or any of the debate that we're seeing in trade policy at the moment is a perfect example of this very old Brussels principle that Dieter Krause can tell you everything about. Is all the good things come, of course, from the capitals, and all the bad things come out of Brussels. And it doesn't matter who decided them. Now, linking back to your question, is who actually wanted this? Who wants these negotiations? Who was in favor of that? I remember kind of in early 2012 when the first ideas of a transatlantic trade deal came up, and there's a longer history to all this. There was a unanimous kind of euphoria, I would call it, for this. We had a debate in the council which had the usual kind of positions, especially the French and a few others, but there was a consensus about all this. And the moment the debate goes badly, let's put it like that, then all of a sudden it's Brussels, because these guys don't communicate well, because these guys don't know exactly what they're doing. And I start every public debate, and I'm not a politician, I'm just a bureaucrat. I start every public debate in explaining who's actually taking these decisions and why, because it's very, very important.
And what do you hear back when you start your...
Sorry?
What do you hear from your audiences when you start off a debate?
No, I hear two things. The first thing is, why do we do trade actually in Brussels? You know, what is the reasoning of all this? So the whole question is that there is a full, let's put it like that, ignorance of 50 years of trade policy that worked well by and large, not perfect but well. You can look at the evidence, you could look at the track record of the European Union. I think trade policy has been, and rightly so, one of the crown jewels in the European policy making. With one exception, until the Lisbon Treaty, we didn't have proper oversight by the European Parliament, and that has changed. One of the most popular committees, I mean, Markus Ferber is better placed to comment on that, in the European Parliament is the Inter Committee, the Trade Committee at the moment. But I think in the end, this trade debate has a particularly challenge for us as European Commission and for the Brussels institutions, because in the end, it is so different in each and every member state. There is a mix of very different projections of different issues, which are kind of projected on this specific issue. And in my view, there's a mix of 4 elements. The first one is a globalization debate, which has different forms and shapes in each and every member state. There is the debate about how you see the United States as a partner. Can you trust these guys? Is it somebody you actually want to engage with? There is, of course, a very big portion of EU skepticism in there. Not only vis-à-vis the Commission, which is an old kind of phenomenon, but also European Parliament. Very often I hear, these guys, they cannot really kind of, they're not democratically kind of elected or whatever you hear. You know? And the fourth one, it's an elite debate. It's a suspicion against an elite, financial, political, etc. And if you go to Denmark or to Sweden, where you have a very pro-TTIP or pro-free trade, let's put it like that, atmosphere, and if you compare it to the debate that we have in Germany or in Austria, it's two worlds apart with very different kind of settings. Italy with a social democratic government. Okay, we need to generalize, but by and large, very supportive of free trade. And that is a big challenge, of course, for us here to do this.
How do you prepare for that? Do you come with the same set of facts and with the same kind of ammunition, or how do you prepare for those different debates and different discussions?
In the end, you would need a real kind of specific, tailor-made communication. The issues that are debated in Austria are different to those that are debated in Bavaria, for example. The issues that are kind of number one in Poland are very different to the things that are discussed in Portugal, for example. No, the biggest problem is this phenomenon of a fact-free debate or post-truth or whatever you would call it, so that the feeling and the concern or the perceived concern kind of overtakes the fact itself. So the people say, I feel afraid that public services will be dismantled. Then you come into that debate and say, okay, let's discuss, where exactly, how? And after a long debate, you come to the point that actually you have done everything to protect this. And then if the argument then back is, but in any case, we don't trust you guys in Brussels.
Because we don't believe you, or what is that the basic argument?
It might be institutional, it might be, I don't know, I hope it's not personal, but...
Is that what you experience as well, Mr. Ferber, when you come home to your constituency? What is the most local concern that people have?
I do a lot of meetings for CETA and TTIP. Yeah. And my introduction question is, would you have come if I would have invited you for our free trade agreement we are negotiating for the moment with Japan? And then people say, oh, that's Brussels. You do all this in hidden
secret
offices. No one knows you are negotiating with Japan. We didn't know that. And I say, sorry, it's public. Everyone knows that we are negotiating with 30 countries for the moment. And I have really problems in consumer protection issues in Japan. Not even Japanese industry standard. I'm an engineer, so I now understand these things. But even in food sector, I think not everything which is allowed in Japan should be allowed in the European Union. Or I say, wow, we are negotiating with Mercosur. And if you look to the area which is used for NGOs, GMOs, yeah, sorry. GMOs in South America, by square acres, it's really more than in the United States. I did not get one letter till now about GMOs from South America. Or we are renegotiating the existing agreement with Mexico, which we have in place since 2000. Oh, so my impression is that CETA is attacked because it should be the blueprint for TTIP, and TTIP is attacked because it is the United States, to be open-minded.
So anti-Americanism is the main driving force?
I don't know whether it's anti-Americanism. It's the mistrust of American law companies who sample, for example, complaints, and which is a procedure we don't know in our system, although it is not foreseen in CETA and it will not be foreseen in TTIP, but there's this complaint, and I can fully agree at the end. They say, maybe you have all the good arguments, but we have always a concern that something could happen, or there is something hidden which even you don't know. And again, to fight against that brings me back to the last panel as well. We have a lot of arguments for the brain, and we have nothing for the heart, and the others have a lot of arguments for the stomach or the heart, but none for the brain, and that will never work, as 80% of our decisions are taken out of the brain, the heart, and not of the brain. And so they made a TTIP no. We never organized a make TTIP go.
Why not, by the way?
I don't know. Don't ask me. I'm not responsible for that. But I spoke with German industry whether we can do a kind of TTIP, make TTIP go. And they tried to do something like that, but it's always a reaction. So we started with this chlorinide chicken. Everyone now is experienced people on chlorinide chicken, and we will not accept that. Then they came with other things. So investor-state dispute settlement, for example, which was invented by Lutz Guellner, but you are not able to convince people that that is not a bad thing, as now Commission is taking care on things which have been invented by Lutz Guellner. And so to continue this story, we are always in the defensive. Whatever comes up, we give answers for the brain, but we have never reached the hearts why free trade is in our interest, why free trade agreement with well-developed country is a chance to create standards, to protect our standards as well. And if we fail doing so, others will decide on the standards in the 21st century outside European Union, outside the United States. And I don't want to have, at the end of the day, an Russian, Brazilian, South African, Indian, China free trade agreement which sets the standards for the world.
I have to
the BRIC
pass
states
on
to
the question
translate
to the Commission. You have all those organizations with the arguments that go to the hearts of people are rather small and are pirate ships. Why is the Commission, are the Commission services unable to cope with them and to come up with, to anticipate what are the arguments of the other side and to come up with arguments that go to the hearts of people?
Well, I think we come up with the arguments as soon as the facts, or as far as the facts are concerned. But the issue is really, can you reciprocate the same level of emotion? And then we come to the very heart of the European construction and about this thing that I just explained beforehand. In my view, it would never be possible to do this kind of centrally, institutionally from Brussels here. That could only be done if this is hand in hand with the national governments, who are, of course, much closer. And by the way, since Ms. Merkel is also here, Minister Merkel, also with the regional governments, that is something that we are trying to do also. I think the answer for us is not so much kind of to now make against the TTIP is evil, a TTIP is great, or whatever campaign, but to focus on 3 or 4 things. And the first one is really to explain or to give examples. I think this is what people are craving for. And of course, there were also mistakes or kind of shortcomings in our way, how we communicated about trade. Look into the Financial Times today. There's a very good article about this. Macroeconomic effects, which is our kind of mantra, is not really motivating for most of the people. It appeals to some part of your brain. If you're an economist, that works well. As soon as you have the story, how trade helped not only a company, but maybe a community, and we have super examples. The world is full of this. Take this pottery making place in Poland that has been selling or kind of tripled its sales to South Korea after we have made our South Korea-EU trade agreement. And now we have all the South Korean tourists that are actually visiting this village, because they heard about this and they want to see this. These are the real stories. So really examples, give the human face to that. And then what I would call context and text. So context is why are these things be done, which is totally out of the public debate. I don't know why. The world is changing. We have a total different way of how the global economy is organized. Look at production chains, look at the added value that is created in trade. Looks very different to what was 20 years ago. So the context is so important, or what is happening in other parts of the world. Markus Ferber just mentioned it. The acronyms of trade agreements in this world that people have never heard, like TPP maybe, but there are things like RCEP, etc. So the world is changing, and we are kind of on a very defense. And the third element is text. So either it's in there or it's not in there, your concern. Either it's addressed or not addressed, and there's not much that then can be said about this. And that explains maybe why we had a lot of difficulties in the TTIP debate, because TTIP is in the making, in negotiations, so there is no text. I can only defend what we as negotiators want to achieve, what our approach is, what our practice is, where our red lines is, but I cannot show the final text. And of course that creates a lot of suspicion. In the Canada agreement, on the other hand, the text is there, so we can have the debate. And if somebody tells me public services are not protected, then I'm happy to have this debate and look into the text, and let's look exactly whether this is enough or not. But that is not a debate that is really happening.
is it happening? But it is happening in the CETA case, in the Canadian case,
it is
it
more
starts
and
to
more
happen.
happening, and that's a good development. But I mean, until very recently, I read I don't want to name in which publication, but people said the secret CETA agreement. You know,
was
although it's
ours at least, no?
1.5 years, it's already public. The text. You know, it's on our website. Everybody could have looked into that. So that is a bit the big challenge, and in my view, it's something that we have to address, where we need to adjust also our way of dealing with things. And I think we have done a lot, but of course, there's a process which is not kind of happening overnight.
On that slightly positive note, at the end, I think we need to wrap up and give the floor to the next panel. But before that, I'll have a question for both of you with your estimates. Will TTIP be done eventually, and by when?
Now you put me on the spot as a bureaucrat, you mean? That's why I like Markus first. And
I think the time is limited, and everyone knows that neither Mr. Trump nor Ms. Clinton are in favor of a huge expansion of free trade agreements. The last talks I had in the United States was that there's a chance to ratify TPP in the time after the elections, before the inauguration. But that would be the same time slot where we had to finalize TTIP. And if I look to the result of the last round in July, I had last week the chance to meet Ignacio, our chief negotiator. I'm not so optimistic that there's really a chance to finalize all the open points, because the crucial points are still open. We have solved by text, I think, more than 80%, but the crucial points are still open. And as long as there's no movement, especially from the American side, that's our point of view. The Americans say we have to move, but only to give you one idea. In a public procurement procedure, we can't say we are opening our markets for public procurement, but in the United States, it continues by American. That will not work.
But
so we can't open.
Markus Ferber, if the window of opportunity is closing, does that mean there won't be a TTIP at all at the end? Or do you think it will be done by, I don't know, in 3 years' time? Or
my personal opinion, which is not linked...
This is what we're asking for.
My personal opinion is that we will not be able to finalize it in this time slot, which is foreseen. And then we have more options, and I hope we take the options, take that what has been already agreed, which is a lot of technical stuff, which is already a first step of opening. Let's regulate those things we have already in place, although they are not regulated, especially the regulatory cooperation, which is already happening, taking place, but it's not fixed in a proper agreement. And let's do all the things when the time is ready to do those things. That's my personal, private opinion.
Lutz Guellner, last word, when it is going to be done.
of course, we are slavishly following the instructions of the member states and the European Parliament and make as much progress as we can this year.
That tells you something about the state of play.
contradiction.
Please join me in thanking the panelists and give them a warm applause.
And of course you.